we have two speakers who are coming to talk to us. First of all, we're going to hear from MedTech Europe. So Alexander, you're going to share with us what's coming from medical devices, and then Lena will take us through what we can expect from the pharmaceutical environment.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be the second to last speaker, so I'll try to make it as exciting as possible, because I have some exciting things to share with you actually, and I think that's a bit of the nature of what my association is representing. So it's not always good news, but many times I can bring somewhat good news or somewhat of a next step in a solution, so that's quite exciting, and thank you so much for the invitation. It's truly an honor to be here. Now, I'm Alexander Olbrecht. I'm the Director for Digital Health at MedTech Europe.
Let's get the mics closer to you.
I'm a bit taller than the previous speakers.
Yeah.
Happens to me often. And besides digital health, I also am responsible for everything that is cardiovascular health in MedTech Europe. And MedTech Europe is the trade association, European trade association for medical devices and digital health as well. So quite proud of that as well. Now, speaking of which...
It's really good. Close to you, yeah.
Speaking of which, we have a quite extraordinary organization actually. So we are divided into technologies, so medical devices and in vitro diagnostics, and for now the youngest is digital health, and that's actually my department. And at the same time you're organized into pathologies, and cardiovascular is one of those. And that's a sector group, and that's something that we bring dedicated companies together to really work very pragmatically on certain topics, and cardiovascular is one of those. Another example there is our newly founded robotic surgery sector group. Now, these innovations, I've listed a few of those that might be very familiar to you, and it taps into what we as a trade association do. So we represent all of these companies that have these types of solutions, and at the same time we have what we call national associations. National associations are actually local entities of trade associations. For example, the Belgian one, the Spanish one, etc., and they are a member of MedTech Europe as well. Some examples here, we have blood tests. We've spoken about blood tests quite heavily already. We have imaging techniques. The previous discussion touched on that as well. Cardiac implants, monitoring, and minimal heart invasive, and you see where I'm going with this. Now, there's a good case that why we are, as a trade association, heavily investing in these types of diseases, and especially the one like cardiovascular disease, because there's a true issue in here. The data is very obvious, and I'm not going to preach for the choir here too much, but it's quite obvious that it is a huge problem just by looking at the numbers. It's the leading cause of that in Europe. I think that should convince a lot of people already to take more action, but clearly this isn't the case. So we need to help push this effort at the same time. And the experts agree. I think I'm taking a little bit of a position here on behalf of you, because I consider you as the experts, but I think we can all agree on the fact that it is a huge problem. There is so much to be done, and at the same time we are seeing that there's a huge opportunity that is getting lost. And it goes as simple, and I'm representing the most modern medical technologies that are available today, but it goes as simple as using a stethoscope by the general practitioner, and that tells you a lot actually. Now, the fun part of my presentation is actually showing, or at least going a little bit more into details of what kind of innovative examples do we have. And a nice one here, we talked already on artificial intelligence quite extensively today, is AI-powered cardiac monitoring. So you are probably familiar with having this halter around your neck for 3 days, and then there's a vast amount of data coming from that halter, and that has to be analyzed very hands-on by a cardiologist, and so on and so on. And in some cases, you even have to go to the hospital and stay there for at least 24 hours. So this is quite cumbersome, to say the least, for a patient. Now, evolution goes in that far that nowadays it's possible, and I say it's possible depending from where you are and so on, to just use a patch instead of a halter. Now, instead of having 3 days, that data gathering, which is already significant, you can have it up until 14 days, plus the fact that it can be as simple that you can take a shower with that patch. Now, it can be relevant because those are data gaps that you can fill in. Now, I already hear the physicians thinking in the room, well, that's going to be cumbersome. I have to analyze all of that data. Well, do you, is the question. Because if AI starts to help the physician in actually analyzing all of this data, we can, with the specific solution that I'm talking about, decrease by 60% the amount of time invested by a physician to analyze that and actually help physicians in order to take a decision. I'm going to give you a very extreme example of that. I know the concept of time, and still I have a device here in front of me to tell me, because I don't know what time it is for the moment, but I know what time is. But I have 3 lights here that show me that I'm in the green, the orange, or in the red. This can be as simple as that these types of AI diagnostic aids can help with such a simple things and tell you, okay, this is fine, this should be looked at, and this is dramatic. And it's especially the orange light that can be very significant in this, because it can point the attention of a physician that, let's face it, truly did remarkable studies and has truly remarkable competences, to really point that attention to where it is needed. And that we can create a lot of efficiency, and you as a patient can actually benefit from more time with your general practitioner, physician, nurse, whatever healthcare provider it may be, because in the essence we are human beings, and that is how artificial intelligence can really bring back that human interaction when it comes to illness, treatment, and diagnosis. That is a specific example on medical devices. We have as well, all of that is in vitro diagnostics. We've discussed this with the previous speaker as well. And we see a similar point. And I'm referring to the man with the striped shirt there with that particular question. We could indeed analyze standardly 20 markers, for example, in vitro diagnostic test. We could. But then there are people that have other types of diseases, and they will ask the same thing, and most probably they will come with 15 or 7 markers to be tested as well. And to do that most efficiently, we need to identify very clearly what do we want to test. And again, with big data and having sufficient testing and so on, there is a possibility, because now they say that's too much work, in essence. There is a possibility that we can aim for that, and step by step we can go for that and actually have that for patients available. Now, at the same time, I want to point out this is very exotic, or for me it's not so exotic, but for many people, especially my friends, they think that I'm living on another planet from time to time. But we have stethoscopes, we can have a digital component there, and we can reconsider on how we work with them. Today, I think nobody in his right mind is going to buy a stethoscope that is not a medical professional. We can, with the help of digital technologies, we can, with the help of empowering people, help them use and fill those knowledge gaps and really advance in that particular point as well. And at the same time, innovation is not necessarily defined by how new and modern the technology might be. It can have to do with the fact that in a remote place, for example, we bring something that for us is very well known, but we can bring it to a remote place and have those patients, citizens, benefit from that as well. So innovation is a multifaceted issue and a multifaceted thing, and it has to reach the patients. It is part of that product, if you will, and I mean not a product as in a commercial idea, but in the product as mathematicians look at it. It's one very important factor there as well. Now, as a European Trade Association, I think I convinced you about how beautiful it is, but the difficult part is actually to convince policymakers about all of this. So with our group of companies, we are aiming to have healthcare, it starts there, as a top priority in the next European elections. And then at the second point, in the European elections, we really want to have cardiovascular health on top of those political negotiations and on top of that political calendar, because, and that's why I started with, it's the #1 killer in Europe. And what we are clearly asking for, and this is the end of my presentation, is to have a European dedicated cardiovascular health plan with targeted health checks, including primary prevention, secondary prevention, a whole integrated patient pathway that considers every aspect of patients, their way and their journey, let's say, that it is integrated in that. At the same time, if we are as ambitious as I'm mentioning, we need to have the right funds for that, to allow everybody, every stakeholder, to actually aspire to have somewhat of a touch point on that European cardiovascular health plan, including research and development. And finally, we are here to share knowledge. So a knowledge center is extremely important, especially for a complex diseases. The previous panel beautifully shown for a complex diseases, cardiovascular health. So I want to finalize with that, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have at the end, or feel free to grab me by the collar later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexander. Lena, please. Oh, sorry, that's me.
So last but not least, I'm going to be very quick because I know everybody is tired. So I'm Lena, I'm from Novartis, I'm a government affairs expert, and I am passionate about shaping healthcare systems and policy.
You need to be by the mics.
Yes. And today I represent FPA, the Cardiovascular Health Platform. And I'm very proud because I want to tell you a very small story about how this was created. So 2 years ago, I was having a meeting with the European Heart Network, and I don't know if Birgit is here today, but she will be here tomorrow. And she said, so I was talking to her as Novartis, and she said, well, these are all great ideas, and we do really want to work, with you and shape the European policy landscape, because nothing is done for cardiovascular disease, but really, I cannot talk to just one company. You need to get together. And so she put that challenge in front of me, and I said, well, actually, you're right. We don't have a voice. We're not united. So I went back to FPA and said, we need to establish a CVD working group to have a united voice and represent be able to be on platforms like we are today. And FPA said, well, we have already a platform on cancer. We're not sure. We need another platform on diabetes or on cardiovascular. Cancer is right now our focus. And that's where I thought it's not that easy, even within our own industry. So the reason why today I'm proud that we have this CV Health platform is because of all of you who put pressure on us to have a united voice and be able to talk to you and understand your needs and work together. So that was my little story. So after 2 years, we are a group of 10 companies today, which is a good sign. 10 companies involved in cardiovascular health. We were 4 on year 1 of the creation. That means there's a huge interest from the industry to invest in innovation in CVD. And that's not a given. Why? Because as you see, cardiovascular treatments comprised only 3% of approved drugs in Europe or launched drugs in Europe and the US in the last 5 years. Cancer is 10 times more, has 10 times more drugs coming into the market. So there's a huge lag in terms of CVD innovation, but there is also good news. I think there are 3 main reasons why CVD innovation is very difficult, unlike other disease areas, because the trials have to be very large and over a very long time to show hard outcomes. So if trials could just show LDL lowering, for example, we would be much faster. But we actually have to prove reduction of heart attacks and deaths. So you're talking about extremely costly trials, and if on average one drug to be on the market requires $1 billion investment, in CVD it may be up to $5 to $10 billion to bring a treatment on the market. The other major issue is the slow adoption. So once we've gone through reimbursement, actually those drugs are not really being given to patients. there's extremely slow adoption, inertia among doctors, and that's where we also have solutions in terms of the health system becoming more proactive on treating their population. And there are mechanisms to do that, to accelerate adoption of treatments, and I'll talk about that very quickly. So some misconceptions around CVD on why our policymakers are not acting, but things are starting to change, is that, there's this belief that there is no unmet need in cardiovascular disease, which is a problem, that is a lifestyle disease, and by investing in health promotion and, primordial prevention, we're good, and we have statins, so problem is solved. So we're together with FPA and all of you trying to change our narrative as well and make them aware that there are also genetic risk factors. And then there's also this misconception that CVD is all about older people. Actually, we don't want to talk about deaths in general. We want to talk about the disability and the premature mortality. So that's also an important thing to think about when you communicate, not to focus on CVD is the number one killer, because no politician or policymaker wants to hear that. They want to understand the cost, the disability, the burden. So again, these are numbers, 1.1 trillion, that's the cost globally by 2035, and preventable deaths is where we need to focus rather than overall deaths. I will skip through those challenges which we heard about today. But let's look at the good news, which is what are the key areas for innovation from the pharma industry. So for the next 5 years, we're looking at smart therapies to tackle blood pressure with less bleeding. I will not talk about any specific products. I represent the industry and I'm not here to promote individual assets. So cell therapies is also an area where there is innovation. RNA targeting therapeutics. So we're moving more and more into targeted, preventable therapies or personalized prevention medicine, you could call that, if we would have also the right screening strategies. So the screening and targeted therapies go hand in hand, but also targeted doesn't mean we cannot tackle the population in a more broader sense, because the new technologies like RNA are injectables, which could be once every month or twice a year. So think about it more moving into a vaccine-like models in the future, which would help enormously adherence as well. New anti-inflammatory therapies in ASCVD, inflammation has been understood as an area with high unmet need. First-in-class treatments for obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and apps as well, which accompany the pill, that are also developed by the pharma industry. So a lot is coming up, but we need you and the whole community to make the case to policymakers that we need to invest also in new treatments and that there are true unmet needs for the uptake. So some solutions, as I said, build alliances in your country, do the same as European Heart Network did 2 years ago. Go and knock on the door of the pharmaceutical companies and tell them to get organized and build alliances in every country. And that's the only way you can succeed and get your message to politicians. So we saw the Heart-Brain Alliance being put together in Germany. Amazing example. I think there are now 24 organizations in Germany around the Heart-Brain Alliance. They're doing lipoprotein A testing in the parliament. They have moved the needle in 1.5 years. So it's a really good example to follow. And of course, each at EU level, where FPA is a member of, MedTech and FH Europe and many others, which are also moving the needle at European level. And I would say 3 messages from the industry, but I believe we're all aligned on this, is advocate for investments, promote quality of care measures and healthcare system incentives. So what does that mean? In the UK, there's the QOF, Quality Outcomes Framework, which incentivizes GPs to perform, not just to perform the test, but to actually lower your values. So they're incentivized for improvement in your health as opposed to being incentivized to test and screen. So we need those incentives in every country. And then finally advocate for heart health checks and screening programs, as my colleague from MedTech mentioned. These are the heart health checks that we're advocating at European level together with diabetes. I think, just to wrap up, how you can help show that there is a sense of urgency, that premature deaths are happening every day, and that there's an opportunity to save lives and premature deaths. Highlight the quality of life and the impact of CVD on the quality of life and the productivity gains. Focus more on secondary prevention and the need for investments. And finally, I would say we haven't talked enough about women's inequalities in CVD care, and we're gathering now more and more evidence around that and going to the parliament also around women's inequality. So it's something that we hear is resonating a lot externally. This is what I wanted to share with you, and the light is red. So.
Excellent, thank you.